And I'm not giving up, I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me.
One. Hey everyone! Are you wrapped for Christ? Are you fired up for Jesus? Hey everyone, I am your host Drew, and I thank you very much for joining us again on another episode of Radical Christianity, where we highlight God in action. Today, we have some great guests lined up for you, but first, can we talk about the whole Bud Light can controversy? If you're looking for a beer that has light on flavor and heavy on controversy, then Bud Light is the beer for you. So apparently, Bud Light sponsored trans activist Dylan Mulvaney by celebrating the 365th day of his transitioning with a commemorative can featuring the image of Dylan. In a video, Mr. Mulvaney is seen promoting the brand dressed up as Holly Golightly, Audrey Hepburn's character from Breakfast at Tiffany's. Yep, it's a collision of high fashion and lowbrow beer. Kind of like a match made in a frat party. Drag race meets beer pong, right? Okay, so now this endorsement by one of the most popular beer brands in the nation has some of the beer's loyal drinkers up in arms, quite literally. Bad boy musician Kid Rock even posted a video of himself shooting several rounds from a machine gun into cases of Bud Light, and he included some colorful words and a choice finger for the brand. He was obviously fired up over something. Some folks are outraged, others are confused, and some are just wondering if Bud Light even tastes any good. Well, let me tell you, it's no miracle, but it gets the job done, right? Okay, so in response, many individuals have taken to distancing themselves from the brand. And shop owners are reporting sales of Bud Light dropping, while other sales of other brands are going up. But if you think you can avoid the brand by opting for Corona, Miller Lite, Natty Ice, guess again. Because Anheuser-Busch owns hundreds of beer brands and even has 50% share in Coors, the other crappy beer. Now, that does kind of reduce your options a little bit. I heard one of the new brands called Moses & Sons is coming out with a beer made from wheat, barley, and hops grown exclusively in the Holy Land. They're calling it Hebrews. What a great name, right? Okay, meanwhile, I also heard about a new brewery started by a couple who go by the names of Adam and Steve. They're coming out with a beer made from apples. They call it She Brews, and it's featuring a large snake on the can. Well, I'm not sure if I'm going to be drinking that one. Okay, well, that's all silliness. But in reality, a well-known country musician, Travis Tritt, has committed to taking the Anheuser-Busch catalog off his tour offerings. Yeah, big move. Now, he may be only selling soda and ice water. Some folks are saying that using a drag queen like Dylan Mulvaney on the can is a form of representation and inclusivity, while others are saying it's a way of rainbow washing to appeal to a certain market. Some are saying that this is an offensive celebration, while others are saying that it's just a marketing ploy to get free publicity. Actually, it's probably a combination of all that. I mean, it's like putting a halo on a keg. On the other hand, it's low-cost marketing gimmick that has obviously worked. I mean, we're talking about it, right? I can also see how Christians might be offended by the misgender use of Holly Golightly. Although the character in the movie was originally named Lulu May and changed it to become a New York socialite. So then I can actually see how the character appeals to Mr. Mulvaney. I don't want to sound too preachy because I really don't care what you do behind closed doors, even if that is drinking Bud Light. I'm not one to judge. As the good book says, judge not, lest ye be judged. After all, Proverbs 31:6 says, let beer be for those who are perishing, wine for those who are in anguish. Nowhere does it say, ye must drink the finest grape juice. Now, I'm not saying you should drink beer to drown your sorrows, but it's good to know that the Bible is on your side. I mean, come on. It's Bud Light. In all seriousness, I think we can all agree that at the end of the day, a can of Bud Light is just a can of Bud Light. Whether it has Holly Golightly or Dylan Mulvaney on it, it's still just going to taste like watered-down disappointment. If you're looking for something more righteous to drink, maybe think wine. I mean, it was Jesus' first miracle, right? Does that make wine holy? Who knows? Probably not. At the end of the day, what matters is not what we drink, but how we treat each other. And if we can make each other laugh along the way, then that's just the cherry on top of the beer fountain. All right, you guys, we have a great show lined up for you. Are you rad for Christ? Are you fired up for Jesus? All right, woo! Ladies and gentlemen, I'm excited for this guest. I have barely just met him before this interview, and I'm so excited to get to know him a little bit. You guys will be too. He is the head of Youth Voice Impact, and they are doing some really great things. You are going to love this interview. This is a great guy. He comes well recommended from a friend of mine. So, ladies and gentlemen, please welcome George Starbuck. Woo! All right.
Pleasure meeting you.
Great to meet you, George. Please, have a seat. All right. George, it is great to have you here. So pleased that you're with us today.
Boy, thank you for bringing me along here today.
Hey, it's
It'll be fun.
It's going to be great. You know, this is the first time we've met in person, but we have a mutual friend, Mark.
Yes, we do.
Mark's a great guy. He's a great guy. I like him a lot.
He is. And we have another mutual friend. Yeah, you know, Jesus our Lord, right?
Yeah, well, Jesus is definitely a mutual friend. That's awesome right there. Yes, indeed. Yes, indeed. So, okay, so before we get into Youth Voice Impact, all right, can you briefly summarize, like, maybe your testimony, how you met Jesus, and how you got started to Youth Voice Impact for the audience?
Wow, you know, that was such a long time ago. In fact, this July 27th, 1958 would be 55 years since I came to, you know, ask Christ in my life and really become a follower of Christ. And man, it's been fun. It has really been fun. In fact, it's really cool about walking with the Lord so long. You know, you've moved beyond that break-in stage. Kind of like this couch here, you know. New, it's a little stiff, and as you get comfy in it, you really find your place. And it's been a long time since I've struggled with just what is faith? You know, what is trusting God? I've come to enjoy that comfy chair of man, just that interaction with my friend Jesus, the Holy Spirit, and that power. And just talking back and forth with God the Father in conversation and understanding what it is to live in the discovery of that whole adoptionship. You know, being in the family of God, you know, we're adopted into that family. We become transformed into the Christ, the one that loves the entire world. And then we also begin to realize that responsibility of what we have. When we get that transformation, we begin to love other people like He loves us. And it causes us to really take that step across from that, hey, God, let me tell you how to operate things, to God going, hey, George, come walk with me a little bit. And I see that you're becoming like Christ, and I'd like you to do something. And don't worry about it. I'll take care of all the details. All you have to do is trust me that I'll take care of those, and just follow, and everything will end up being just fine. That is a cool place to be. And you only kind of discover that after you have gone through that break-in period.
All right.
Understand?
I do understand, yeah. So, were you a child when you accepted Jesus? Or was it like a church camp? Or?
Well, yeah, you know, I think I was telling you, I was over at, I was Carpinteria Beach, California, at a junior high retreat. The pastor's up there talking. I was like a normal kid, kind of drawing around the sand, and he says, if anybody wants to ask Christ in his life, raise your hand. Well, I go, wait a second, my hands rose. I think, well, okay, come on into my life, and it's been a transformation in there.
That's awesome.
But being a kid from the '60s, there were ups and downs. That was a different era there. That I could be talking to some of you guys out there. You know what what it was like, hair down to here, beard to here, and doing things you shouldn't be doing. So that was part of that breaking period.
Yeah.
God breaking me in.
Yeah.
So.
Well, that's. I mean, I'm sure you have plenty of stories of ups and downs through that period. I mean, nobody goes through life without turmoil, transition, and temptation, and all that good stuff. So.
Oh yeah. But to finally get to the others, for the most part, get the other side.
Right.
Do the math. Here I am, 55 years ago, when I was junior high. You can do the math. I'm older now, and things have gotten. But with that, it's also gotten fun too, because I'm doing things that I never had time to do before.
It's really weird how God opens up doors and you didn't expect to go through them and find something new, right?
Well, that's part of that leading. Hey, George, I got something I want you to do, and I never wanted it. But who am I? We all ask that question, who am I? God, why are you calling me to do such a thing? And apparently he sees something there, because, man, I'm not gifted truly in any way except for just following. I might be a little stubborn. Maybe that's why you chose. George, you're a stubborn individual. That's why I'm choosing you.
Well, he chose you to do Youth Voice Impact. So, how did that start?
We do have a little bit of time here, don't we?
A little bit, but
okay.
Yeah.
So I sit in on some different committees here in Fresno. One of them's West Fresno Ministerial Alliance, which is an old alliance of pastors, and they kind of gripe now and again. Say, here we are.
Old pastors griping?
Yeah. Here we are.
Surprise.
I believe Alan Doswell says there's 480-something churches in Fresno, and yet we have such little impact upon the community. So they came to me and they said, George, how can the church truly get involved in changing the image from its image? And what is the image of Fresno? The image of Fresno is run down, gang infested, poorly educated. You got to lock your car and things. And so how do you change that? And I said, well, okay, give me 8 college students to represent the church and the demographics that we live in. So I was given 2 Hispanic, 2 Black, 2 Asians, 2 whites to represent the church and the demographics. And I actually paid them for 3 days as consultants. And I said, here's the task. Come up with a game plan on how the church can get involved in changing the image of their community. I was given heavenly individuals. The wisdom that they had, just phenomenal. The very first thing they did was that they looked at that image from the perspective from a distance. Say from Texas. What does Fresno look like from Texas? Well, I think I just kind of mentioned it to you. And that image is not, when you look at it from a distance, you're not seeing north, south, east, west, central. You're not seeing black, white, Hispanic, Asian. You're seeing the entire pot of it. And so in order to change that image, you have to deal with all of that. Such wisdom. And so they started off by putting together a mission statement. And the mission statement is cultivate young adults to care for their community while developing responsible current and future generations. You know, a big part of the problem we're in is because the irresponsibility or the lack of generational responsibility and accountability of the generations before us, not being responsible to the generations following.
That is a true problem. Yeah.
And so now you're faced with, how do you go about encouraging that change? Because you can't do this. You can't go and, hey, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong, you're doing this wrong.
Yeah, no one responds to that.
No one responds to that, and you don't have to do that. So we looked at some interesting concepts that were developed. One was called gentle embarrassment.
Gentle embarrassment. Okay, I know I'm going to like this. Tell me more.
Well, it is interesting. All of this, by the way, this is a discovery for our youth, also for our church. There again, they don't learn by this. They learn through the discovery. And they learn through how do you position yourself gently to create change. Did you ever see the movie The War Room?
I think so, yeah.
Yeah, for those of you that hadn't, the family is about ready to go through divorce. And here is little daughter sitting on the bed, sitting on the bed. And mom walks in and sits on the edge of the bed. Dad's off, he's off somewhere else. And mom comes up and she goes, "You know we love you." Yeah, just about jump back. And the daughter is quiet. And the mom begins thinking, uh-oh, something's going on here. "Well, you do know we love you." Almost as stern. And the daughter comes back and says, "Hey, Mom, you know what position I play on the ball team? Do you know what award I won at school?" And the realization of, wait a second, my actions aren't showing what I'm doing. That was a paradigm. Through bringing forth truth in a gentle way, it led towards change. Powerful tool. Our world is messed up. And it's through shining light upon that messed upness in gentle ways that you're able to reveal that darkness that shouldn't be there. And from there, they go, all right, how do we approach this? And so we tested some ideas. We actually tested an idea that was called Mission Not Impossible. Too bad it launched 2 weeks before COVID, but it proved the theory that our youth are able to bring forth these difficult topics that the rest of us are facing and bring solutions to them. So here's what the contest was. It was, Fresno has a poverty problem, right? Everybody talks about it. For most people, poverty is that thing that separates us. And that's one of the strategies we use is let's take that thing that's talked about in coffee shops and griped about in street corners and in city council chambers, and let's use that as the catalyst. And let's use our youth to begin leading forth a change. So he said, hey, we went out to the churches and we said, put together your own teams, choose your topic of poverty, and come up with a solution to it. And that's an important thing about Youth Voice Impact. We're not interested in dealing much in the symptomatic problems in there. We want to direct our focus upon the causation of the problem.
Okay.
In there. Because if we deal with that causation, it will lessen those symptoms out there. And so we had some 15 teams, and and they brought forth ideas of teaching financial money management in junior high and high school. You may have read something about Jerry Dyer's bringing about this truck that has a shower in it. It rotated around from location to location. That idea was actually discussed at the Mission Not Impossible contest. In fact, if you guys would like to see something, Jerry Dyer does have a 10-minute support video on that. Just go to our website, yvinc.org. And
That would be for like Youth Voice Impact Incorporated.org, but
correct. Yeah, youthvoiceimpactincorporated.org. And you could pull up that video, and you can also see our current project we're doing. So, come back. So, we engage them in those serious community problems in hopes that the church will rediscover what it's capable of doing in unity. We have a responsibility to care for our neighbors. And true, a lot of people have the church fit into this box of hatred. And it's, my mom used to tell us, you know, this, you throw out the baby with the bathwater kind of thing. Well, don't toss out all the good ideas. The church does have some great ideas, such as teaching financial money management in junior high and high school. And now we have this next event, which by the time you hear this taping, it will have already occurred. And this, which would be back 1 week, we're doing what is called a Youth Empowered Affordable Housing Summit. We're tackling the problem of how is the next generation, our kids, going to be able to afford home purchasing? Because right now everybody's wanting to force them into rentalship, and that's not good for a community.
no, and that's basically how they're addressing affordable housing right now.
Yeah. So we're actually tackling that topic, and I was telling you on you know, living in the discovery of being a member of God's family. I really haven't had to worry about this a whole lot. God brought forth this idea of a new idea. I delivered it to Fresno State, and by the way, you have to remember, Youth Voice Impact is registered as a religious nonprofit organization because we represent the church in the community. And we brought this idea to Fresno State. They got so excited. They go, oh, please, let us partner with you. Well, on top of that, now we have Congressman Jim Costa.
Nice.
Who is going to be our keynote opening speaker. Then we have Tyrone Williams of the Fresno Housing Authority to be another keynote speaker. And then we have Deborah Nankivil, who's the CEO of the Fresno Business City Council. Along with that, we have Matt Grundy and Andy Hausler, the president of the Tiny Home Association and American Home Association, and others helping our youth who came through as being led by God into this to provide new ideas to addressing the affordable housing crisis, not just here in Fresno, but they're acting as consultants to the nation. That's how God works. You know, God works in those big ways. And our youth, and this will be fun to tell you after the fact of what has come about from this. Because our kids are going to be putting into place a definition that does not exist. And you're going to ask, what is that definition? Right? Well, that definition is, you know, what they're going to define what affordable home ownership is for the next generation in 2 sentences without using percents or dollar amounts.
Okay.
And because of things have changed so much, people still think we operate underneath that old HUD definition, 1/3 of your income kind of thing. Well,
Very few people pay 1/3 of their income for housing these days. Yeah.
no. And when you pay more than that, what happens is that it's drawn away from the economy of the community. It's drawn away from the enjoyment of the family, the extra movies you can go to, or the ice cream parlor, whatever.
Yeah, well, it still goes into the community. It just goes in through different people.
Well, yeah, it goes to
Either
paying
the
off your
bank-
taxes, your bank.
Yeah, your bank or your landlord, right?
And so, unfortunately, I can't tell you one of the big ideas that's going to be the game changer. But here's what our youth are seeing the problem is, and they're not far off. I'm part of the problem. My generation was raised to where if you worked hard, anybody could qualify for a home loan. And that's what we did. We bought houses. Well, now we've gotten greedy. Oh, to say that Christians have gotten greedy? Because our entire system, because the church hasn't been involved in bringing good into the city, our system is that I depend upon the investment in my home to pay for my aging income. So I want that price to go up as high as it can. So you're younger than I am, but the younger kids, we want them to pay for our aging income. That whole thing's imploding.
Yeah, well, I understand that very well because I actually haven't bought a home because my rent is significantly lower than what my mortgage would be.
Yeah.
Because I've lived in the same place for 22 years.
Whoa.
Yeah.
So they're addressing that, and they're discovering what it is to be cultivated, to have a heart for your community, and begin establishing some generational accountability and responsibility through home ownership. And the ideas they're bringing to this, there again, I can't share that one, but after the fact, I get to share with you what came about from this. And that's kind of the entire walk with Christ. Show me how Christ has changed your life. How has Christ impacted, a community? And what is sad, and I cry over it, is that the heart of the community is beginning to lose hope in the church because they see the church is no longer able to help them with their struggles that have to do with poverty, that have to do with the education, with the housing, with food, paying the bills. For some reason, the church has moved away from unity to disunity in action, that they want to operate independently. And operating independently, they use that unity, which is like a giant co-op that can create the change needed.
It makes me think of like Old Testament. It was a thing that, forgive debt. You know what I mean? Like forgive your debtors. The Lord's Prayer, right?
Yeah.
You know what I mean? The Lord's Prayer is forgive the debt as you would like to have your debts forgiven. You know what I mean? And it's not just about how you wrong somebody. I mean, it was actually literally about debt.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes. And so I actually had a question crossed off today that I wanted to pose, and it was kind of formulated that the adults have responsibilities to teach their kids how to live within their means, not to go into this $3.1 million or $1 trillion debt. And when they lose that responsibility of being parents, it's the child's responsibility to remind them, us the parents, what our responsibility is in there. I'm surprised they haven't come forth and asked the question, hey, Mom and Dad, how do you plan on paying this $31 trillion debt off within the next 6 years? Because as you recall, that 7th year was kind of a grace year.
Right.
You had 6 years, debts would carry over. So really, if we want to be responsible, or our kids should be asking the parents, hey, this is your debt. And how do you plan on being responsible and paying it off? And teaching us the same responsibilities to care for the next generation. Teach your children the way of the Lord, so when they get old, they'll remember it.
Yeah.
Unfortunately, what are they remembering right now?
Yeah. No. Right now, the lessons that are being taught are not necessarily the right ones. The greed and self-serving seems to be the most dominant lesson that we're teaching children today.
Yeah.
I think what you're doing is really great. Everybody, check out Youth Voice Impact. Radical Christianity will be posting the video that George gave me of their program early, so you'll be able to see it when this episode airs. It have already been on our page and stuff, so you should be able to go there and find it and check it out. George, it is so great to meet you.
Oh.
And I'm really glad you came in and shared with us today. And we'll have you back. We'll have you back, and we'll follow up how things are going.
Oh, please do. I'd love to come back and share with you the results of this.
Yeah.
Because that's it. The results of what, I tapped on that just a little earlier, the results that Christ brings about in the lives. I mean, there was a time to where God goes, George, that's not the person I want you to be. And I know that date. And I turned around, I walked away. I've never looked back. And I'm so thankful, because I would not be alive right now. This mean hippie of an individual, doing the things I shouldn't have been doing. And now, there again, I'm celebrating my 45th anniversary here pretty soon. With the love of my life. So
that's awesome.
So
yeah,
that God can change. God changes.
Yeah,
Christ changes.
And that is the lesson. Jesus
Yeah.
will change your life. Thank you so much, George.
Thank you.
Housing prices and the cost of living are increasing faster than household wages and personal incomes. About 75% of the population wants to buy a house, but only 25% can actually afford it. Something has to change.
This isn't just a local problem, it's a national one. That's where the Youth Empowered Affordable Housing Summit comes in. We like to call it the YES Summit. Here at the University Business Center at California State University, Fresno, we're holding a 2-day event where young adults, city officials, and community leaders can come together and explore new ideas on how to tackle this economic issue.
My kids are going to have to win the lotto in order to afford a house. Things are getting so expensive, I worry about the next generation.
Our goal with the YES Summit is to engage young adults in developing their future affordable housing market. This is an open invitation for mayors, city planners, and other interested individuals to attend the YES Summit. Bring along a delegation of young adults to represent your community.
Home ownership is just one part of starting a family. It's part of the American dream.
I always pictured that perfect home with the big red door in front.
Can't afford anything nowadays. Prices are rising, especially homes.
Attend presentations, small group brainstorming sessions, and most importantly, network with others from across the nation who are working towards solving this crisis. Join us April 21st and 22nd at the YES Summit as our youth explore what affordable homeownership means to them. Find out more at yviinc.org.
Hey everyone, I just want to grab your attention for something. We operate here on Radical Christianity from donations from sponsors and generous people like yourself. If you feel like you would like to support what we're doing here, please go to Radical Christianity's website. That's Rad for Christ, or R-A-D, the number 4, CHRIST.com. Rad, the number 4, Christ.com. On that website, you will find a link to donate to us so that you can help us reach more people and spread the word of God. It is essential that we are able to operate and continue this wonderful adventure, and we could use your help. All right, we operate on the generosity of people just like you. We need your help. If God's pulling you, we don't need a lot. Give us $5, give us $10, give us $100. If you can do more, God bless you. But what we really need is your support. So if you would just go to radforchrist.com and do what you can, that would be fantastic. If all you can do is just share this video with somebody else, then God bless you for that. But you know what? Just spread the word, spread the gospel, because we're trying to turn some lives around for Jesus. Thank you very much for your time. We love you. Ladies and gentlemen, we have an extra special guest today. This lady is doing amazing things in the community, and you are just going to go crazy when you hear what she has going on. Ladies and gentlemen, please give the warmest of welcomes to Delfina Vazquez.
Thank you.
All right, Delfina, really great to have you here. I'm so pleased that you're here. Welcome to the show.
Thank you.
Yeah. Would you please tell the audience your testimony?
Well, first of all, I want to say thank you. I'm so excited to be here. So I would love, and I'm thankful that I get the opportunity to serve Jesus and to tell him what he's doing in my life and in our ministry, definitely. So God is put a ministry called Selma Community Outreach Ministry in our hands, in my husband and I. And it started in 2014 by the calling of the Lord. And have you ever had the calling of the Lord and then you debate?
All the time.
About, well, Lord, I really don't want to do that. And so that's kind of what I was doing. In 2014, we moved to a town called Selma. And I didn't know anybody, but God had already been putting in my heart to feed the homeless. And so I didn't know anything about feeding the homeless. So therefore, I was saying, Lord, can you give me something that I know, like administration, like women's ministry? And I kept hearing, I want you to feed the homeless. So it just so happens, like God does, he aligned for me to go on a women's retreat. And as I'm going on this women's retreat, there's a bunch of ladies from the church I used to attend in Lemoore. And we went up to Shaver Lake. And the lady there that was in charge, she said, listen, you guys have to enjoy the beauty of Shaver Lake. So they give us a scavenger hunt list, right? And so we go. And we're out there looking for, egg corn and a green leaf and everything on the list. But after a few hours, we were a little tired and none of us could find the last thing on the list, a feather. We kept looking for a feather. We could not find one. So all of a sudden, one of the ladies said, wait a minute, aren't the pillows in our rooms made of feather? And so everybody's like, yes. So we all, they all take off to the room. And I thought, yeah, I'm not doing that. I'm not going to go invade the poor pillows. And so that gave me an opportunity to walk and talk to the Lord in an audible voice. Up until then, we were kind of just talking to each other, right? But now I've been open this opportunity to talk to the Lord. So I begin to talk to him and I say, Lord, I think I'm hearing you that you want me to feed the homeless. And I'm such a wretched sinner. I don't even know that maybe you're not even talking to me. And I'm really just tripping. So I'm walking, I'm still looking for a feather. And so I'm walking and talking to the Lord in an audible voice. And it'd been a while. And all of a sudden I get this thought. And the thought was, why don't you make a deal with God like Gideon did? And ask him for a feather. And I thought, that's a good idea. If he really is calling me to feed the homeless, then he can give me a feather as a sign. Because I had been walking for a really long time, right? So the thought is in my mind, and I'm getting ready to speak the thought out audibly. And I say, God, and I kid you not, I look down, And right at my feet was this amazing, beautiful, beautiful blue feather. And at that moment, for the first time in my life, because right up until then I was going to church, but I was lukewarm. But at that moment, I realized that the God of the universe was really talking to me. And he really wanted me to feed the homeless. And this was the confirmation that I needed.
That's amazing.
So I bent down and I picked up this feather. And I remember feeling the power of the Holy Spirit flow through me. And it was so intense. And then I remember realizing, Lord, you want me to feed the homeless, and I am going to do that. But how do I serve somebody? How do you serve people you don't love? And so I asked the Lord, I said, Lord, if you want me to do this, I will do it. But you're gonna have to give me love for them. And at that moment, I felt this tremendous, it's like the scales on my heart fell. And all of a sudden, it was different. I was different. I went back to the Airbnb that we had rented, and the women were there, and I was like, you're not gonna believe this. The Lord gave me a feather, and he called me to feed the homeless, and I was not the same person anymore. And they actually looked at me like, okay. They thought I was a little crazy, right? I went back to the church, and I was telling Pastor, you're not gonna believe this. The Lord has called me, and I'm so excited, because now I know that I know that I know. I'm not tripping. The God of heaven, creator of heaven and earth, called me to feed the homeless. And they all looked at me like, okay. So, I kept telling them, well, we got to go feed the homeless. I realized really quickly that this wasn't going to be a we thing. And I remember 2 weeks went by and I was driving. And as I was driving, the Lord said to me, turn here. I was going down Floral in Selma. And I used to live out in the outskirts of Selma, going towards Cedar. And there's nothing but vineyards. And so I was driving home that day, and it was kind of late already. And I heard the Lord say, turn here. And I remember saying, Lord, there's nothing but fields out there. There's nothing out there, Lord. And I heard the voice say, turn. And so I turned. And I'm scared because it's like dark. There's nothing out there. And I'm driving, and all of a sudden, I see this body on the ground, and they're sitting on the ground, and they're literally rocking back and forth. And I see from the light, and I'm thought, oh my gosh, that's a person. And so I pull over, and it was a homeless woman. And she looks up at me, and she keeps rocking. And I said, are you hungry? And she looks at me and said, I haven't eaten for 2 days. And I thought, get in my car. Come on, I'm going to take you to go eat. And so I took her to go eat, and I told her, listen, are there homeless in Selma? She goes, oh, yeah. I go, really? She goes, yes. I go, would you show me tomorrow, like where they are? She goes, yes. And I said, okay, I'll pick you up tomorrow. So we made arrangements, and I picked her up the next day, and we started driving behind Walmart. And behind Walmart in Selma, it's nothing but field, right? And there's a pond there. And she drives me into this pond, and we're going towards the back, and there's like literally flat land. There's nothing. And so she goes, stop right here. So I stop. She gets off the car, and she starts yelling, saying, Louie, Louie. And I'm like, oh my gosh, there's nobody out here. I mean, this is like flat land. And she's yelling, and all of a sudden, this mat from under the ground flips over, and this humongous, like 6'4" guy, about 400 pounds, comes out of a rabbit hole. He's climbing up, and he climbs onto his knees, and then he gets up, and he's looking up, and I'm looking up at him, and I'm thinking, literally, I'm like, do I run now? Do I run now? because I was like, what did I get myself? I had no idea what I was doing here. And so he looks at me and I said, hi. And he starts, a very nice guy. And those two people, Amanda was her name, and Louis, were the very first people I started to feed in Selma. From that day, for 2 years, the Lord had me feeding the homeless every single day out of the back of my car. And there were times where I had no food, no money, and I would say, Lord, and he would provide. And he began to provide. And I would be crying and saying, Lord, what do I do? And he said, just feed them. I said, but I'll barely have enough for my own family. He said, feed them. And so then one day I had nothing. And the neighbor knocks on my door and she says, listen, she goes, I know you're feeding the homeless. I said, yeah. She goes, well, I have all those chickens. They have too many eggs. You can have them all. So for the first miracle began to happen, right? I'm like, what? Really? She said, yeah. And then a week later, I had another woman from Mika's ministry, and very huge ministry. She calls and says, listen, I know you're feeding the homeless. She goes, I want you to come. She goes, and she introduces me to all her workers. She says, whenever she comes, she can have everything she wants. So the Lord just begins to open doors through this 2-year journey of me feeding the homeless every day. I remember I was taking them food every single day. And one of the homeless one day, I'm taking them food out of the back of my car. My son, my 5-year-old son is with me. And he says to me, he says, can I ask you something? And I said, yeah. He said, are you running for mayor? And I said, no. What? No. He goes, well, are you running for some kind of office? And I said, no, why? He goes, why are you doing this? And I could truly, genuinely say, because I love you. Because the Lord our God has commanded me to feed the least of these. And that's why. And I remember he hugged me. And he just gave me this big old smile. And he goes, I knew it. And he took off running. And I remember walking away from that thinking, wow. Wow. Fast forward. I began to pray for the Lord to let me go to get a job, because every day, 7 days a week, gas was getting really expensive and my husband's income was not very much. But God was providing. And so I prayed for the Lord to give me a job. I said, can I just have a job? Just $500 to pay for gas, Lord. And in 2 weeks, I remember the first pastor offered me a job, way more than I was asking the Lord, part-time. And he said this to me, he says, Delfina, he said, we want you to do everything you're doing, but just do it for us. So then the Lord provided the income for the gas. And then another church I began to work with in kids ministry, they said, we want you to just run our kids ministry. We want you to do everything you're doing, just do it for us. In other words, you still feed the homeless. So in 2016, I had my 15, we actually formed our own 501c3 for Selma. And we call this Selma Community Outreach Ministry. I began to realize during this journey that I needed to do more than just feed them. And so God began to connect me to different resources. How do I get them in rehab? How do I help them, not just giving them food, but giving them opportunity to get out of this homelessness? So the Lord began to teach me as we're working and walking through this journey. And then one day, the Lord said, okay, in 2019, right before COVID, right? I resigned my job because the Lord said, it's time to resign. And I said, but Lord, he says, I have something greater for you. And so I said, okay. During all this time, I'm feeding the homeless. We're putting them in rehab programs. I partnered with Teen Challenge. You know, we would have to drive them to Fresno, so I got connected with them. And we began to do the intake in Selma. All the pastors in the churches began to help me. If we had a family, a mother's domestic violence, I would call the pastors in between all of us. We'd gather the funds and put them in a hotel until I could connect them to Marjorie Mason. So I began to learn how to link, right? How to link without resources, of financial resources. And so I just continued and continued and continued to do that. And then the Lord said to me, he said, it's time for you to resign. He goes, I have something greater. And I thought, okay. So I don't question the Lord, because I'd walked through this journey, right, where he has provided. I literally got a phone call one day from a business owner that owns a clothing store, secondhand clothing store here in Fresno. And he knew I was feeding the homeless. I was providing showers now for the homeless. We had bought a shower trailer. So now we were feeding them, providing showers. And I get a phone call from him, and he said, come to my store. And I thought, oh, he's probably going to give me clothes and stuff like that. He walks me all the way to the back of his store, into the back of the building. There's like a whole bunch of yellow trucks, like U-Haul trucks, but the yellow ones. And he says, you see that truck right there? And I said, yeah. And he hands me the pink slip and the keys. And I look at him and goes, your God said to give you this truck. And I thought, what? He gives me the keys and the pink slip. He says, your God said to give you this truck. And I thought, oh my gosh. Amazing. God just kept opening the doors. So when I left my job, the Lord said, you need to go and sit at the table at the Fresno Madera Continuum of Care, where the funding comes in for the homeless. And so I went there and I started sitting at the table. I joined the board. And I sat there and I listened to all the Chinese language they spoke. All the acronyms, I had no clue. I had to write them and Google them later, right? And they were getting ready to prepare for a grant that was going to be, it was January. And in March, it was going to be opening for the time to write the grant. At the end of March, you had to have it turned in. So I'm going to class, I'm taking grant classes, I'm taking all these things to think, okay, I've got to get some funding to help people more, right? To help the homeless more, to help the women in domestic violence. Because I was able to help them, but at a very limited scale because I had no funding, right? We were a 501c3. My son and I were literally, would go and feed the homeless out of our car. And my husband financed it pretty much with his job. So I'm learning, and they say, okay, you gotta write this grant. And March 3rd, we get the call that my mom has cancer. And from that day, every day after that, I was in the emergency room with her because she was in so much pain. And I remember taking my laptop, and in between pain shots, I've been trying to write this grant. And I kept doing that. And they said, your mom's gonna need surgery. She's got a cancer the size of a football. We need to take her to Sacramento. So I went with her to Sacramento, being the oldest. I was kind of the one that was expected to go and be with her. And I wanted to be. So I went with her, and I remember one night thinking, okay, I've got to get this grant, and I'm down to 2 days. And I'm not even close. And so I thought, I'm going to work all night, and I'm going to get this grant done. And my mom wakes up after surgery, and she's in this hideous, horrible pain. And I remember she looks at me, and it was about 2 o'clock in the morning, and I was awake because I was writing this grant. And she looks at me, she says, Delphi, I'm not going to make it. And I said, yes, you are. And I started to pray, she will live and not die in the name of Jesus. She will live and not die in the name of Jesus. And all of a sudden, the Lord ascended the angels from heaven. And the room was just, you could feel the power of their presence. And I was praying. And when I opened my eyes, I looked at her, and she was looking above me. And I was on my knees just right there at her bedside. And she looks at me, and she's looking above me, and I look at her, and she says, Delphi. She goes, there's angels all around you. And I remember saying, thank you, Jesus. And the pain was gone. It was gone. And I said, rest, Mommy. because you will live and not die. And she just closed her eyes and she was resting in peace. And I went back and I sat at my seat. And I picked up my laptop and I realized I have never tapped out on God from the day that I made a commitment that I would serve him. Ever. Every breath I've lived for him. And I said, Lord, forgive me. But I'm not going to be able to finish this task. Because when we get out of here, I'm still going to have to go and take care of my mom. And I don't know how long that's going to be, and I'm not even close to finishing these grants. And I know all these people that are homeless are counting on me to get this grant. But I'm sorry. And I closed my laptop. And I said, I'm going to take care of my mom. See, during that whole month, the head of DSS, amazing woman, she's such an amazing woman. She's such a beautiful, amazing woman of God. She had put me under her wing and she said, Delfina, this is how you write the grant. Write it for just $100,000 because you've never had grants. You've never managed them. You know, write it small so that we can help you through the process. She's helping me, taking me under her wing. So I'm only going to write this grant for $100,000. And so I wasn't able to do that. We went home. And all of March, all of April, I was with my mom every day. And I remember May 1st, my mom said, Mija, go home. I'm okay now. And I went home. And on May 3rd, my husband and I were sitting at the kitchen table. And the phone rings. And it was that person, head of DSS. And she says, Delfina. I said, yes. She said, you didn't turn in your grant paperwork. I said, I didn't. And she said, that's okay, we know why. So she said, so we want to give you the grant anyway. And I was like, what? She said, we want to give it to you anyway. She said, I want you to meet with us, come. We scheduled a meeting that next Friday. I hung up the phone and I was just like, my husband was like, what? How does that happen? And I said, I don't know. He goes, well, how much is it for? I'm like, well, it must be 100,000 because that's what she told me to write it for. And so I'm sitting there and I'm just amazed at what had just happened. So we are meeting the next week. And I'm sitting there with these amazing people that spend their life helping others, right? And they're talking all these acronyms. I don't even know what they mean. And then she turns around, she looks at me, by the way, it was like over $1 million.
Wow.
I almost fell off my chair. She said, we're gonna help you. They were gonna help me manage it, of course, because I've never done this. And they have took me under their wing and they have helped me and taught me every step of the way, like what to do, how to do it. You know, you're with grants, all you can do is what they're for, right? And so the grant was, we named it Hand Up Housing. Because I realized through the journey, through the seasoning of feeding them, that I needed to do more than just feed them. I needed them to provide them a hand up instead of just a handout. And so our ministry, Selma Community Outreach Ministry, under that umbrella exists Hand Up Housing. And through that program, it's a rapid rehousing program. So we're able to assist families up to 12 months or homeless or, you know, people that fall under that category in the county area. Because Fresno has a lot of programs. But I was the only one in the county that was already doing what they needed. So we just basically started doing it and had funding now to house people with. So we were able to house families, help them get a job, provide, the resources for them to help them get on their feet. When I first started, Selma had 175 homeless. And then right when we got the grant and the approval and the funding came in, guess what else came in? COVID. Of course.
Right.
So that slowed things down, but our ministry never shut down. We were probably one of the only churches that stayed open. We stayed open. We fed every homeless. 175 plates a day we made. And in that, included 60 seniors who were shut-ins. And the Lord provided all the funding. Incredibly, I would get phone call after phone call. Oh, well, we'd run out of food and say, well, listen, we have, and it was there. Funding after funding. So through hand-up housing, how that works is we're able to provide a family. I get a phone call, there's a family living in a car. They can come see us. We're now an access site. Officially, we're linked to the HMIS system, which is, all the different programs like West Care, Turning Point, all the different organizations. We all work together in the same system so we can do an intake. And if they do it at West Care, I can see it, what's going on, and vice versa, so that we have that information as long as the client gives permission. And so we're able to create a community now. And that community can really help instead of duplicating resources, right? So when we get a person that comes in and it's a family with domestic violence, but they're from Fresno, well, I can do the access and I'll send them up what's called a match. And there's a person that will match them, but to a person within that they qualify within their organization. But if they're from Selma, then they'll be matched to me. And then I can help them. If they're from Fowler, Kingsburg, Delray, Parlier, Reedley, 7 jurisdictions, all the county area, they can be matched to me. Those families I can help and get them in the housing, get them through the process, take them along the way and help them in that journey. And we're able to pay for their rent, their utilities to move in, the deposits, which are crazy now, right? So we're able to provide that for them now. So when COVID hit, we got the funding because we were already in the right place. I lined up for the hotel in Selma and in Sanger. So we were able to house the families that were homeless to get them off the street during COVID. And during that time, help them also get housing through our programs. So it was a group effort of different organizations, but we've taken 175 homeless in Selma down to 45.
Wow.
So that's a big difference.
That's huge.
That's a big difference. And so we are super excited about that. Our ministry is also connected to a program called REACH. So we are able to help people with their PG&E bill. We can help them up to $500 for their PG&E bill once they get a 14-day disconnection notice or a 15-day. As soon as a disconnection notice comes, guys, we can help you as long as you have a PG&E bill. We will link them. We can also help them with vouchers. We have vouchers for a DMV to get their IDs, to help them to get their birth certificates for free with the voucher. We do all the access. So even if they're not from our area, we're not going to turn them away. But our goal is to diverse them to, we try first to diverse them to their home. For instance, I had a woman, it was so cold when this weather got really crazy. She had to walk from Madera. And it was probably 10 o'clock at night when she arrived to Selma. And it was raining and she was in shorts. And one of the police officers called me and he said, hey, I got this young woman. I have a bad feeling if I let her go, something can happen to her. It's really late, And so I came to get her and we put her up for the night. And the next day, we talked and I said, so what is it that you're trying to do? And she says, I'm just trying to get back to my family in LA. So I said, okay. So we put her on a one-way ticket to her family and I called them, make sure they would receive her, right? We didn't want to just ship somebody, that there's a soft handoff, right? And so we do things like that all the time. We don't have funding for that, but we pay it with tithes and offerings. I was a victim of domestic violence in my first marriage for 12 years. So that's a deep passion for me.
Right.
So anytime we have women with domestic violence, we will house them for the weekend. If they come, that's always at night, right, when it happens. Or I'll get a call at 2 o'clock in the morning. There's a woman in the fields with her kids or at the park sleeping. And so we're connected to Marjorie Mason Center and different programs that help women of domestic violence. And so we act as a linkage, but usually you can't get a hold of Marjorie Mason Center at 2 o'clock in the morning.
Right.
So we will house them in a hotel for the night. And again, that's tithes and offerings that we put up. And the next day we link them. And so we just have learned to become a resource of linkage through all the communities that are involved in doing this type of work. We've learned, hey, if we work together, we can work better. So all the different organizations that do this, we're all connected so that nobody is double dipping.
Yeah.
Because that happens.
It does.
Right?
Yeah.
So we're able to watch. Well, I see that you were here. What happened? Well, we see the notes there of what happened, right? And so it's a linkage where we're able to use the money wiser and not double use it like this person's using it here. It used to be that homeless in Selma, they would go and knock on the door of the pastor and they'll say, well, it's freezing cold and I need a place to stay because I just got homeless. And the pastors, well, they would, not knowing what to do, they'd reach into their pocket and say, well, here's $70 for a hotel. Well, they caught on to that real quick, right? Mm-hmm. So then they'd go to another pastor. And so in Selma, we created, well, if anybody comes and knocks at your door, you just refer them to me. If I need your help, I'll call you. And so that's how we started. So at first I would have to call the pastor, okay, I need $150 for the weekend. How much can you give me? So, well, I'll give you 75. Okay, so call another pastor. Can you help me with another 75 or 50? And then I'd get the mother to get money together and we'd put them up and then I'd link them right away to the resource. So we began to understand that. That's what made me learn linkage. So now, Selma Community Outreach Ministry, we've been an official 501c since 2015, but I've been working in the community with our team. We have a big team now. And our board members, 2 of our board members were actually people I started feeding in 2014 that were on meth and homeless. They had been homeless and on meth for years. Lost their children, everything. And now they're fully clean, off meth, clean. They serve in our board. They serve in our ministry full time. Brandy, who was one of them, she's like my right hand, and her husband. And then remember I told you about that person, that very first person? She had been homeless for over 10 years.
Wow.
On meth, full-blown meth. She was skinny as a twig. She would walk all over Selma. Her name is Amanda. As a matter of fact, we thought she had died because she got hit by a car and it broke her hip in pieces and she was thrown I don't know how far. I mean, the enemy tried to take this poor woman out, right? One day she was so gone on meth, she burned down a house. And so she wound up going to jail for a year. But when she got out of jail, she came to look for me. And she shows up at our church, at our ministry. And I remember walking in the room and I see her and I'm like, Amanda. And she's like, yeah, I just got out of jail and, And so we began to pray with her and help her. and help her stay clean. Pray with her, pray with her. I remember one day she calls me and she said to me, she goes, I want to even quit smoking now. I'm even done with smoking. 10 years on meth, homeless. You know, that's hard to do. And I remember praying for her. She goes, wait, can you pray for me? I said, yeah, let's do it now. It was on the phone. I prayed for her. She hasn't smoked since. Completely clean. Amanda now has her own place. She's an active member of our church. She comes in almost every day to help, because one of the other things we do is we feed the homeless every day. 7 days a week, we're open. 7 days a week, they can come and get prayer. 7 days a week, we're there. We feed them from 11 to 1, a hot meal. And through that, we're able to say, hey, would you like Teen Challenge? Would you like to go into a rehab program? How about just a detox? And they'll say, no. Okay. Next week, how about now? And eventually, I have a whole team of people that have now said yes and serve in the ministry. So God really put in place, I remember I started just feeding the homeless. I think if he'd told me all the other stuff I was going to go there, I'd be like, yeah, I don't think so, right? Right?
Right.
And just recently, God gave us our building, our own building. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with it, but maybe some of you guys will be. It was the old 99 Club in Selma on Whitson.
I know where that is.
Yes. Well, I get a call from the owner, and she says, would you like to buy a building? And I had been thinking, we need to get a building. We're an outreach ministry, but we need to get a building, right? Our own building. Because I believe in worshiping Jesus until Jesus is done. Like, I don't operate on a clock. So I said, well, let me see it, right? Because I thought, a bar, Lord, right? Well, so we go and we see this bar, and it's hideous inside. Oh, gosh. The wall, every wall, including the trim, is wrapped in green, ugly vinyl. And every is pins, you know, where they staple it to the wall like a cushion type of thing. So this whole building is literally got vinyl pinned to it. And I'm thinking, I don't see it, Lord. Right? And she's like, maybe you could turn this into a church. And I thought, I don't know. I said, I'm gonna, and so this was really like my cop out. I said, well, I'm gonna have to call the city and see if the zoning, I gotta see if they'll even let me zone it for a church, right? And as I'm walking out of this building, I hear the Holy Spirit say, now you will leave the 99 for the one and bring them back to the 99. And I thought, oh Lord, here we go again, right? Here we go again. And so I go back to my office because I also am the president of the Smart Center, the community center. So I go back to my office and I call the city code enforcer. And I said, hey, listen, I'm thinking about buying the 99 Club and turning it into a church. And I said, can you tell me, like, what would it take to like zone it? I mean, I really don't even know what I'm supposed to do. And so he said, yeah, let me look. And he's like, you know the 99, okay. So I'm like, okay. So I can hear him typing on the computer. And he all of a sudden says, oh, wow. And I thought, what does that mean? What does oh, wow mean? And he goes, this place is zoned for a bar and a church. And I thought, what? He goes, yeah, that's strange.
God at work.
God was at work.
Delfina, I am so pleased you came here today. Your story is so amazing. I'm in tears. This is awesome. Thank you so much. God is using you in huge ways. Miracles after miracle after miracle.
Yes.
It's so much. The audience is going to just I'm sure there's a lot of people in tears right now. Thank you so much for coming on Radical Christianity. And let me tell you, you're definitely rad for Christ. You're fired up for Jesus.
I love it.
Yes.
I love it. So now they can find us at 2001 Whitson. It's right there.
2001 Woodson.
Yeah.
We'll put all the information for everybody to find so they can reach out to you. And thank you again for coming on the show.
Thank you. God bless you.
God bless you. Hey everyone, thank you so much for joining us again on another episode of Radical Christianity. I would like to thank you so much for putting in the time to sit through a whole episode. And I know that some of you out there right now have Jesus knocking on the door of your heart right now. There's Jesus sitting there on the door of your heart. And maybe you're ready, maybe you're not. Some of you won't be ready. Some of you will take a long time to be ready. But if you are ready to surrender your life to Jesus Christ and have Him be the master of your life and have Him take care of the things in your world that need taken care of, if now is the time, then it's not hard to do. It's really easy. All you got to do is just talk to Him. You don't have to be formal prayer. You don't have to say it out loud. You can just say it in your head. But you just kind of want to say something along the lines like, Jesus, I need you. My life is not going to be right without you. Can you please come in to my heart and help me be the person that you've designed me to be? If you say something like that, it's going to be a real deal. Jesus is going to be in there, and He's going to be there. You've asked Him to come in. You've given yourself to Christ. It's a real thing. Okay? I mean, the Bible says if you believe in your heart that Jesus is Lord and you say with your mouth that Jesus is Lord and that God raised Him from the dead, you are saved, right? So I want you to know that we are very grateful for you. And if you are a Christian, we're so glad to have you part of the family. If you're a brand new Christian and you took that step of faith during this episode, I want you to go onto our website, radforchrist.com. That's rad, the number 4, Christ.com, and fill out the form and tell us so that I can send you a Bible, and then you can have the Word of God in your hands forever. All right? Now, also on our website, you might find that you can ask us a question, and we would love to answer those questions for you. If you have something about the Bible or faith or ministry or what we're doing or my shoe size, I don't know, whatever you want to know, ask, and we'll let you know. And then also, if you have a prayer request, we have a form there that you can submit your prayer request. We would love to be able to pray for those things that you need. And this is really important. I want every single one of you to know this. This is essential. Jesus Christ loves you. And so do I. God bless you. Thank you for watching an episode of Radical Christianity. See you next time.
Isn't it amazing how a man can find himself alone? Fall into a darkness for an answer that he's never known. And isn't it amazing how a God could take a broken man? And I'm not giving up, I'm not giving up, no, not me. Even if nobody else believes, I'm not going down that easily. So don't give up on me. I will I'll hold on to you. No matter what this world throws.
It's a mystery.